The Ouija board, just a game or a doorway to something far more sinister? For generations, people have gathered in dimly lit rooms, their fingers resting lightly on the planchette, asking questions they were never meant to ask. Some claim it's just their imagination, a trick of the mind. Others never get the chance to tell their story. What happens when the board moves on its own? When the answers grow darker, more personal, when the game refuses to end? Some spirits whisper, some demand, and some don't want to let go. Tonight we open the board and invite the unknown. Are you ready to listen? Because once we begin, there's no telling who or what will answer. Welcome to Sterling Short Stories. Step inside the story, but only if you dare. Story number 1. The Forgotten Name. I never believed in ghosts. Not really. Sure, I had heard the stories, whispers of old spirits clinging to the past, things that went bump in the night. But those were just stories, until the night we played the game. It started with a dare. "You won't do it," Tyler said, smirking, as he pushed the dust-covered Ouija board toward me. "Come on, Adam. Don't be a coward." I rolled my eyes. "It's just a board, dude." We were in the basement of the old Langford house, a place rumored to be haunted. The house had been abandoned for decades, its walls crumbling, its windows cracked like hollow eyes staring into the night. It was the kind of place that dared you to step inside, just to see if you would make it out. A storm raged outside, rain hammering against the boarded-up windows. The air smelled of damp wood and mildew, thick with something else I could not name. Sarah shifted uncomfortably, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "I don't know about this," she muttered. "Oh, come on," Tyler said, his grin widening. "Just a little fun." Katie, the quietest of our group, sat beside me, her arms wrapped around her knees. She had not said a word since we found the board buried under a pile of old newspapers in the corner. I sighed, placing my fingers lightly on the planchette. Tyler and Sarah did the same. Katie hesitated, then joined us. The moment we touched it, the candle in the center of the room flickered. I felt my stomach twist. "Just a draft," I told myself. Tyler cleared his throat, his voice mocking. "Are there any spirits here with us?" For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the planchette moved. Sarah gasped. "Okay, which one of you did that?" No one answered. The planchette kept sliding, slow but deliberate. Yes, a chill ran down my spine. The basement felt colder, the shadows deeper. The rain outside turned into a deafening downpour, slamming against the house like a warning. Tyler swallowed. His confidence faltered, but he forced a smirk. "All right then, what's your name?" The board did not hesitate. The planchette moved faster. "Alice." A strange pressure settled over my chest. Katie finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who is Alice?" The board moved again. "Forgotten." A gust of wind shot through the basement, though there were no open windows. The candle snuffed out, plunging us into darkness. Sarah whimpered, "I want to stop. We have to say goodbye," Katie said, her voice urgent. But before we could move the planchette, it jerked violently across the board. "Don't leave." My breath caught. The walls seemed to close in, the darkness pressing against us like something alive. Suddenly the room smelled wrong, like rotting flowers and old decay. Then I heard it. A whisper, not from the board, from behind me. "Adam." I spun around, but there was nothing there. Tyler cursed under his breath, his face pale. "Okay, that's enough. We're done." He tried to move his hand, but his fingers would not budge. My own hands felt cemented to the planchette, as if something else was holding them there. The board trembled beneath our touch, the planchette moving faster. "You took my name," Katie gasped. "What does that mean?" The candle relit itself, the light flickered, and for just a second, I saw her, a girl in the corner of the room, pale, thin. Her long matted hair clung to her face, her dress tattered and soaked as if she had walked out of the storm. Her eyes locked onto mine, hollow and full of something I could not name. I tried to scream, but my throat locked. Sarah shrieked, scrambling back. Tyler yanked his hands away, and the board flipped violently, crashing against the wall. The candle blew out again. This time, the whisper was not just behind me, it was everywhere. "Give it back." The basement door slammed shut. The wind roared through the house. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it was quiet, too quiet. The board lay face down on the floor. The candle was gone, and the girl was nowhere to be seen. Tyler grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the stairs. "We're leaving, now." None of us argued. We bolted from the basement, out of the house, and into the rain, not stopping until we reached Tyler's car. I looked back just once. In the window of the Langford house, something watched us leave, something smiling. We never spoke about that night again. But sometimes, late at night, when everything is still, I hear her voice. "You took my name," and I still do not know what she meant, or what she wants. The next day, I woke up to something strange. My mirror had fogged over, as if someone had been breathing against it. But I lived alone. I had locked my doors, checked them twice. I stepped closer, feeling my skin prickle. There, traced into the fog, were letters. "Alice." My stomach turned to ice. I wiped the mirror clean, my heart hammering against my ribs. It had to be a coincidence. But then my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Give it back." I dropped the phone. I did not sleep that night, or the next. I stopped answering calls from my friends. I deleted all the messages. I convinced myself it was my mind playing tricks on me. Until a week later, when Sarah went missing, she had told me she could still hear the whispers, that something was wrong, that Alice would not leave her alone. Then one day, she was just gone. Her car was still in her driveway. Her phone was found on her nightstand. But Sarah was nowhere. The last thing she wrote in her notebook before she vanished, she wants her name back. And now, I am starting to wonder, did I take something that night? And if I did, what happens when she comes to collect? Story number 2. Whispers from the board. I should have left when Damien pulled the Ouija board out of his backpack. We were supposed to be drinking in Lena's attic, telling ghost stories, and maybe scaring each other a little before crashing in her living room. That was the plan. That was safe. But then Damien, always the one to push things too far, had grinned and said, "You guys ever play with one of these?" Lena's face went pale the second she saw it. Damien, "No," he laughed, shaking the board at her. "Come on, Lena, it's just a game." Lena shook her head. "Not with that one. That should have been my second warning. My first was the knot of unease in my gut when Damien pulled the damn thing out. But like an idiot, I didn't listen. Instead, I watched as Damien set the board down between us. It wasn't a flimsy plastic board from a toy store. This one was old. The wood was dark with age, the letters carved deep into its surface instead of printed on. The planchette was real wood too, its edges worn smooth. The thing felt different, heavier somehow, like it carried years of something. Rachel, sitting cross-legged next to me, frowned. That thing looks ancient. Lena's hands clenched into fists. Because it is. She wasn't looking at Damien anymore. She was staring at the board like it was something alive, something watching her back. Damien just smirked. Perfect. Makes it even better. I wanted to say no. I really did. But Damien's smirk, Rachel's curiosity, and Lena's obvious fear all kept me glued to the floor. Maybe I wanted to prove I wasn't scared. Maybe I wanted to prove Lena was overreacting. So I stayed. The attic smelled like dust and mildew, the floor creaking beneath us with every shift of weight. The only light came from an old oil lamp in the corner, its glow flickering like a weak heartbeat. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, jagged and shifting with the flame. "All right," Damien said, setting his fingers on the planchette. He looked around at us all. Fingers on everyone. Lena hesitated. Rachel gave her a small, reassuring smile. "We can stop whenever we want." "Okay." Lena swallowed hard, then pressed her fingers to the planchette. Rachel followed. I exhaled and did the same. The wood was ice cold. Damien grinned. "Okay, time to meet some ghosts." He took a breath and said, "Is there anyone here with us?" For a few seconds, nothing happened. I felt the weight of my own pulse, the slight tremor in my fingers. I was convinced this was going to be just another stupid game. Then the planchette twitched. Rachel yanked her hands away. Damien laughed. "Come on, Rachel. Don't be a baby." But secretly my stomach was knotting itself tight. That didn't feel like one of us. Lena exhaled shakily. "We shouldn't be doing this." The planchette moved again. Yes, a shiver ran down my spine. Rachel stared at the board. Is it actually working?" Damien looked just as surprised as she did, but he covered it with a grin. "Guess so." Lena's voice was barely above a whisper. "What's your name?" The planchette glided smoothly across the board. "Adeline." The air changed, not just in the attic, but around me. It felt thicker, like the space had gotten smaller. I glanced at Lena and saw the blood drain from her face. Rachel frowned. "Lena, isn't that your great-grandmother's name?" Lena didn't answer right away. She looked like she was trying to swallow back something ugly. "Yes," she whispered. Damien raised an eyebrow. "Weird. Maybe she just wants to say hi." Before any of us could react, the planchette jerked violently. "I'm not Adeline." The attic door slammed shut. Rachel screamed. Damien jolted, eyes wide, mouth hanging open in shock. I wanted to move. I tried to move, but my hands felt stuck to the planchette, my body frozen in place. A cold wind rushed through the attic, though there were no open windows. The lamp flickered wildly, its glow casting monstrous shapes on the walls. The shadows stretched longer, twisting, moving wrong. The planchette started moving again, faster now. "You invited me, didn't you?" My chest locked up, my fingers curled, but I couldn't pull away. The weight pressing down on me was suffocating. Rachel sobbed next to me. "Please, make it stop." Damien gasped, his body seizing up. His head snapped back, his spine arching unnaturally. His mouth opened in a silent scream. but nothing came out. His eyes rolled back, all white, his skin stretched tight, like something was pulling at him from the inside. Lena grabbed my arm. "We need to say goodbye." I tried, I wanted to, but the planchette kept moving. "You can never leave." Damien convulsed again, a strangled sound escaping his throat. I did the only thing I could think of. I tore my hand away and grabbed the board, hurling it across the attic. "Stop it." Everything went still. The attic fell into a suffocating silence. No wind, no movement, no sound, except our ragged breathing. Then Damien collapsed forward, gasping for air, his body shaking. Lena crawled to the board, grabbing the planchette. "Hurry." Rachel was still crying, her hands clamped over her mouth. With trembling fingers, I forced the planchette to goodbye. The moment it reached the word, the attic door creaked open. The pressure lifted. The air felt lighter, but none of us moved. Finally, Damien coughed and staggered to his feet. His face was pale, his hands shaking. He looked at me, then Lena, then Rachel. He didn't speak. We didn't need to. One by one we left the attic, moving in silence. I was the last to step out, my fingers still tingling from whatever force had held me there. Just before I pulled the door shut, I heard it, a whisper curling through the darkness like smoke. "You will play again." And I swear just before the door clicked shut, the planchette moved on its own. One last time. Story number 3. The Last Game. It was supposed to be just another Friday night at my friend Ryan's house. A few drinks, some bad horror movies, and crashing on his couch like we had done 100 times before. But then Emily pulled out the Ouija board, and everything changed. "No way," I said immediately. "Not happening." Ryan laughed as he cracked open another beer. "Come on, Jake. It's just a dumb game." Emily smirked, brushing her dark hair behind her ear. "What's the worst that could happen? I don't know. Demonic possession, ghosts following us home." I crossed my arms. Lauren, sitting on the floor next to me, gave me a small nudge. "Relax. If anything happens, we just say goodbye, right?" That was the rule. Say goodbye, and the spirit leaves. Simple. So, against my better judgment, I sat down. The Ouija board was older than I expected, its wooden surface scratched and slightly warped. Ryan had found it in his grandmother's attic, buried under a pile of forgotten junk. That alone should have been a sign to leave it alone. But we didn't. Ryan placed the board on the coffee table, and we each put 2 fingers on the planchette. Emily, Lauren, Ryan, and me. "All right," Ryan said, a grin tugging at the corner of his lips. "Is anyone here with us?" For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the planchette moved. Lauren gasped. "Okay, which one of you did that?" Emily grinned. "Not me." Ryan held up his hands, proving he wasn't pushing it. My stomach tightened. The planchette slid again. Yes, the air in the room shifted, like the weight of something unseen had settled over us. I felt my pulse quicken. Ryan leaned in. "What's your name?" The board responded, letter by letter. "Eva." Emily shivered. "Creepy." Lauren hesitated before asking, "Did you live here?" "No." A chill ran through me. The air suddenly felt colder, and I fought the urge to rub my arms. Ryan grinned. "Are you friendly?" A long pause. Then, "Not sure." A gust of wind blew through the room. Even though the windows were closed, the candle on the table flickered wildly. Lauren pulled her hands back. "I don't like this." I was about to agree when the planchette jerked forward. "It stopped on your name." My stomach dropped. Emily frowned. "Our name? What do you mean?" The board moved again. It spelled Jake. "Yeah." My fingers went numb. Nope. I'm done." I tried to pull my hands away, but the planchette wouldn't stop moving. "Don't leave." I felt something behind me, a presence, cold and watching. I turned my head sharply, but nothing was there. Lauren grabbed my arm. "Say goodbye now." We all forced our fingers back onto the planchette, pushing it toward the word. It resisted. The planchette fought us, but we pushed harder, forcing it to goodbye. The second it reached the word, the candle blew out. Silence. Ryan exhaled loudly, breaking the tension. "Jesus." Emily stood up so fast. Her chair nearly tipped over. I hated that. Lauren was shaking as she rubbed her arms. "Let's not do that again." Ryan grinned, trying to play it off. "What? Are you guys scared?" Emily glared at him. "Shut up." I didn't say anything, because I still felt it. The weight in the air. The cold spot behind me. The whisper of something just out of reach. But I said nothing. We cleaned up, put the board back in its box, and tried to go back to normal. We put on a movie, pretended to laugh at bad dialogue, but none of us were really watching. Eventually everyone fell asleep, but I lay awake on Ryan's couch, staring at the ceiling, listening. I thought I heard footsteps in the kitchen. The next day, I woke up to something strange. My mirror had fogged over, as if someone had been breathing against it, but I lived alone. I had locked my doors, checked them twice. I stepped closer, feeling my skin prickle. There, traced into the fog, were letters. Eva. My stomach turned to ice. I wiped the mirror clean, my heart hammering against my ribs. It had to be a coincidence. But then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I deleted it. Then it happened again. "Why did you leave?" I turned my phone off. That night, I dreamed of her. She stood in the corner of my room, silent, her long black hair hanging in damp strands around her pale face. Her eyes were wide, hollow, unblinking. She whispered my name. I woke up drenched in sweat, my pulse racing. My room was freezing. Then I saw it. The Ouija board, sitting on my dresser. But that was impossible. Ryan still had it. I stared at it for a long time before finally reaching out. The second my fingers touched the wood, the planchette moved. No, I shoved the board under my bed, trying to convince myself it wasn't real. I stopped answering calls from my friends. I deleted all the messages. I convinced myself it was my mind playing tricks on me. Until a week later, when Lauren went missing, she had told me she could still hear the whispers, that something was wrong, that Eva would not leave her alone. Then, one day she was just gone. Her car was still in her driveway. Her phone was found on her nightstand, but Lauren was nowhere. The last thing she wrote in her notebook before she vanished: "She wants her name back." And now I am starting to wonder, did I take something that night? And if I did, what happens when she comes to collect? Story number 4. The Dead Don't Play. I never thought I'd be standing in a cemetery in the middle of the night. But here I am. I should have said no. The second Eric pulled the Ouija board out of his backpack, I felt something twist deep in my stomach. It wasn't just unease. It was dread, but I didn't want to be a coward. Not in front of him. "Dude, this is a terrible idea," I muttered, staring at the board as he placed it on the damp grass. Eric smirked as he lit a candle, the flame flickering weakly in the cold night air. "Come on, Alex. You scared of a piece of wood?" I swallowed hard, shoving my hands into my hoodie pocket. "I'm not scared. I just don't think we should mess with this, especially here. We were in Hollow Oak Cemetery, a place people in town didn't talk about much. Half the graves here were unmarked, lost to time, the names of the dead erased by wind and rain. The air always felt heavier here, thick like syrup pressing against your chest the longer you stayed. Even now, I could hear the distant rustling of dead leaves though there wasn't a breeze. Eric rolled his eyes and tapped the board. Come on, man. Let's just try it. What's the worst that could happen? I had a whole list in my head. Ghosts, possession, cursed spirits latching onto us. But instead of voicing any of that, I sighed and dropped to my knees beside him. Fine, but if something happens, I swear I'll kill you before a ghost does. Eric chuckled. Deal. We both placed 2 fingers on the planchette. It was ice cold. I told myself it was just the October night air, but something about it felt wrong, like it had been sitting in a freezer before we touched it. Eric cleared his throat. All right, are there any spirits here with us? For a long moment, nothing happened. I felt stupid, then the planchette twitched. I yanked my hands away so fast I nearly fell backward. Dude, relax, Eric said, though his voice had lost its cocky edge. That was probably you. I shook my head. It wasn't. And honestly, I wish it was. We sat in tense silence. Then the planchette started to move again. Slow, purposeful. My breath hitched. Yes, I felt a chill crawl down my spine. We should stop. Eric didn't move. His expression unreadable. Just one more question. Eric cut me off. I didn't want to, but I couldn't move. What's your name? Eric asked. The planchette dragged across the board, almost lazily, as if it was deciding. It finally spelled Beth. A lump formed in my throat. Eric frowned. Beth. Did you live here? No. Eric continued. Then why are you here? The planchette didn't move for a moment. She responded. I was taken. The candle flickered violently. The night air turned freezing. Eric shifted, suddenly looking uncomfortable. The board moved again. He took me. I felt it before I saw it. A shift in the air. A presence so heavy it made my skin crawl. I turned my head slowly, terrified of what I would see. Beyond the graves, something stood there, too tall, a shadow darker than the night itself, watching us. I couldn't make out its face, only 2 hollow, gaping voids, where its eyes should have been. Eric saw it too. He cursed under his breath. The planchette flew off the board. The candle blew out, and then we heard it. A whisper, not from the board, and not from either of us, from right behind me. It told us to run. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed Eric's wrist and bolted. We ran blindly through the cemetery, leaping over graves, pushing through the thick fog that had appeared out of nowhere. The air was thick and heavy, pulling at my legs as if something didn't want me to leave. My lungs burned. Eric tripped. I heard him hit the ground with a painful grunt. I skidded to a stop, turning back. Eric, get up. He lifted his head, his face pale as death. Alex, I stuttered. He stared past me. I turned, and it was there, right in front of me, the thing from the shadows. It loomed over me, impossibly tall, its face still nothing but a void of darkness. But now, I could hear it, a low, deep growl, like something ancient and starving. My legs refused to move. Eric screamed, and the world snapped. 1 second, I was standing in the cemetery. The next, I was lying in my bed, gasping for breath. My sheets were soaked in sweat. My chest ached. My limbs felt wrong. My first thought was that it had been a nightmare. Then I saw my shoes. They were covered in mud and grass. My phone buzzed, and message from Eric. Tell me you're home. My blood ran cold. I texted back immediately. Yeah, what the hell happened? 3 dots appeared. Another message came through. I don't know. 1 second, we were in the cemetery. The next, I was in my car. But something's wrong, Alex. What do you mean? A long pause. Check your window. My stomach twisted. I didn't want to, but my body moved on its own. Slowly, I turned my head. The window was fogged over and written in the condensation, in jagged, uneven letters. I took him. Eric stopped replying after that. I called, texted, no answer. The next morning, his mom reported him missing. They found his car parked outside the cemetery. The driver's seat was empty. The door was open. There were no footprints leading away from it. It was like he had just vanished. But sometimes, late at night, I hear his voice, faint, begging, Alex, help me. And outside my window, the letters always reappear. I took him. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to Sterling Short Stories on YouTube, but only if you dare.